Perhaps no archaeological site in Britain, possibly, in much of the world, has inspired more speculation than the great and enigmatic stone circle that we call Stonehenge. Who knows what it was called by the people who designed and built it? A new study from Bournemouth University has offered up the possibility that the stone circle, laid out during the 3rd millennium before the birth of Jesus Christ, served as a solar calendar that enabled the farmers living in the vicinity to keep careful track of the passage of time, the passage of their seasonal year. It's all fantastic stuff. Joining me to speculate about this possibility is archaeologist and journalist Mike Pitts. Hello, Mike. Nice to see you again.
Hello, Neil. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Anytime I see mention of somewhere like Stonehenge in the running order, I'm instinctively delighted. Can you explain for us, and for the viewers especially, how Stonehenge might have worked as a solar calendar?
Okay, I think your word "speculate" is a good start. But the idea is that in the main stone circle there are 30 stones, and that these could be divided up into 3 groups, and that together, as you move around the circle, around these stones, you can map the passing of days and months in a year, and you end up with a year that has 365 days, and then every few years you need a leap year, and the missing days are mapped by the 5 trilithons in the centre of the monument. That's the idea.
It's extraordinary sophistication that they were even allowing for the extra days.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think there are 2 things to bear in mind here. The first is that there have been many studies of societies all over the world of different types of technology, different types of community, and it's almost a universal that people have calendars. We need in this part of the world, for example, we need to know how the seasons are passing, because it hugely affects the way we earn our livings and grow our food and so on. And so people are aware of the passage of seasons. They're aware of the phases of the moon and the changing position of the sun in the sky. And they're very often aware of star constellations as well. This is just a universal. So the question we would have of the people who built Stonehenge would not be, did they have a calendar? Because I think it's fair to assume that they did. And we can see from the layout of Stonehenge and other monuments all over Europe that clearly they had counting systems, because we very often get these multiples of 5s and 10s and other numbers that, the obvious things. So the question then is not so much if they had a calendar, but did they represent it in this monumental form at Stonehenge? And if so, why? There are all sorts of reasons for building Stonehenge. And actually, turning it into a calendar, I think, would become fairly low down on the list of ideas I would have, because you don't need Stonehenge for a calendar.
Precisely. That was my next question was, why would you go to such Herculean effort when you can count to 365 without moving pieces of sarsen and masonry?
I mean, who knows? Maybe calendrical computations were part of what was going on at Stonehenge. But I think whatever explanation we have, and of course people are coming up with explanations, every few days almost. I mean, it's the why Stonehenge is a question we're never going to be able to answer, but at the same time, it's one that we can all have a go at. But I think whatever the solution is, it's got to be more complicated than just a single thing like saying it's a computer or it's a calendar or whatever, because to build this thing would have required an enormous amount of effort and organisation, bringing people together from at least most of southern England and Wales, if not further afield, and would have consumed huge resources. And there must have been a really compelling social, political reason for wanting to create something as large and complex and challenging as Stonehenge. And I suspect if we were to able to go back in time and stand there, and we'd see these crowd of people, maybe involved in the construction, a bit like a sort of a summer solstice event today, except they're work people rather than worshippers. And ask these people, if we were able to go up to them and say, what are you doing, mate? You know, why are you doing this? And I reckon we would probably get as many answers as there were people there. You know, it's like if we were to go out, I don't know, supposing when the O2 Arena was being built and we were to ask people, why is this happening? There's a sort of superficial answer, which is that it's to celebrate the millennium and it's to create this exhibition space. But there are so many other things going on behind, you know, in it. I mean, it was so embedded in politics and society and all sorts of complex issues. It was much bigger than any simple explanation at the time.
I've long wondered if its main function and many other places besides Avebury and the rest existed as places to which people would be drawn, places that were spectacular enough and big enough that everyone knew where they were. And that there were places in the landscape where you could go at specified times in your year in the knowledge that other people would be there. And as well as marking midsummer or midwinter, you could go on with the other stuff, finding husbands and wives for your sons and daughters, trade, and just sorting out what was going on. And that they're magnets to pull people to specific places.
I think the idea of bringing people together, I think, is on the nail already. And that's a big part of that, of course, is going to actually be in the construction process. I mean, moving the stones. So if you take the Welsh stones, for example, the blue stones that come from Wales, I mean, they have a journey of maybe 200 miles over land. And that's going to take many weeks at least. And in the process of those journeys, in the course of those journeys, people are going to be staying overnight in villages and in farms. They're going to be put up by people, and people are going to be involved. And it's going to be something that engages people, even if you're not part of the construction project, of which maybe more than 1,000 people would have been at the height of the major monument. And it would have just drawn people together. And almost, you know, you wonder if that was actually part of the purpose of the construction in the first place, was actually bringing people together in this way and maybe helping to seal alliances between groups in different parts of the country. And then that idea of a focus of communication and gathering and celebrations and festivities and so on then continued as kind of embedded monumentally in the stones and continued for generations.
Mike, I could talk to you about Stonehenge for the rest of the evening and beyond, but sadly I have to cut it short there and move on. But thank you so much for your time and for bringing so much more understanding to the way in which we look at and interpret that wonderful place that is Stonehenge. Thank you, Mike Pitts.